Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Tonight, we're going to spend some quiet time with something very familiar and yet rarely examined. Something that moves through our lives every day without us really stopping to question it. Something soft, steady, and quietly functional. Paws. You've likely seen them today already, even if you didn't notice them. A cat stretching on the floor, toes spreading slightly before settling back down. A dog standing patiently, weight balanced on 4 padded points, barely shifting as time passes. Paws rest, they walk, they press gently into surfaces, and then they move on again. They are almost always there, at the very end of the leg, touching the world first. For many animals, the paw is the body's point of contact with everything solid. The floor, the ground, the earth itself. And yet, most of us never stop to ask why they exist at all. Humans have feet. Animals like cats, dogs, wolves, and bears have paws. The difference is visible, obvious even, but rarely questioned. It's simply accepted as part of how animals are shaped. If you pause for a moment and picture a paw, what often comes to mind first is softness, rounded pads, fur between the toes, claws tucked quietly away or resting against the surface. But that softness is doing real work. A paw is not just something an animal walks on. It is a structure designed to carry weight, absorb force, feel texture, and respond instantly to the ground beneath it. Every step an animal takes passes through that small surface before traveling upward into bones, joints, and muscle. From a biological point of view, that makes paws incredibly important. The ground is unpredictable. It can be hard or soft, warm or cold, smooth or uneven. Every step creates pressure, and pressure has consequences. Without some way to manage it, movement would quickly become damaging rather than sustainable. Paws quietly solve that problem. They spread weight across a wider area. They soften impact. They allow subtle adjustments with each step, even when the animal isn't consciously thinking about it. And they do this thousands of times a day, without effort, without complaint. What's interesting is that paws didn't appear suddenly. They are the result of very old problems being solved again and again over time. Problems like how to stand on land, how to move without injury, how to remain sensitive to the world while still being protected from it. In this video, we're not going to rush toward an answer. We're going to let the explanation unfold slowly, the same way evolution did, by paying attention to how paws work, what they feel, and why they remained useful for so long. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you're welcome to subscribe, and if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps others find their way to this calm corner of the world, one sleepy traveler at a time. The quiet continues here, just as it is. For now, there's nothing you need to remember or solve. Just notice how often paws appear in your memory, how natural they feel when you picture an animal standing still, balanced, supported, at ease. Tonight, we'll explore why so many animals meet the world through paws instead of feet. Not as a comparison of better or worse, but as a story of adaptation. Of bodies learning how to touch the ground in ways that allow them to last. We'll move slowly, step by step, just like an animal walking across familiar terrain. And as the explanation deepens, you don't need to hold on to every detail. Understanding can soften too. The word paw feels simple. It's a word most of us learned early, without explanation. We point, we name it, and the understanding seems to arrive on its own. A paw is what a cat places on the window ledge. It's what a dog lifts slightly when waiting for a treat. It's what leaves a soft print in snow, dirt, or damp sand. But when we slow down and sit with the word, it becomes clear that paw is not a precise term. It's a human word, shaped by observation rather than anatomy. It describes how something looks, how it behaves, and how it feels to us all at once. When people say paw, they usually imagine a few things together: a rounded shape, a set of toes rather than a single block, soft pads underneath, often fur between those toes, and almost always claws nearby, whether visible or hidden. None of that is accidental. What we're responding to is a combination of structure and movement. Paws bend. They spread slightly when they touch the ground. They compress under weight, then rise again. They look alive even when still. Biologically, a paw is not a separate invention from a foot. It is a type of foot, but it's a foot shaped by certain priorities. Most animals we call pawed animals are mammals. They tend to walk either on their toes or on a combination of toes and the flat of the foot. This posture immediately changes how weight travels through the limb. Instead of striking the ground with a rigid heel, the animal arrives softly, through multiple points at once. That softness is part of why the word paw exists at all. If you imagine a hoof, the feeling is different: hard, singular, durable but blunt. A paw, by contrast, suggests nuance. It suggests an ability to feel the surface, not just endure it. Underneath the fur and skin, a paw contains multiple layers working together. Bones arranged into toes, joints that allow spreading and flexing, thickened skin on the underside, fatty tissue beneath that skin that deforms slightly with pressure. This combination allows a paw to change shape moment by moment. It is not fixed. It responds. That responsiveness is one of the key reasons paws are so widespread among certain animals. They allow movement across unpredictable ground. They allow animals to adjust without stopping. They allow a body to remain stable even when the surface beneath it is not. There is also a sensory aspect built directly into the structure. Paw pads are rich in nerve endings. When an animal steps, it isn't just placing weight, it's receiving information. Temperature, texture, vibration. The paw quietly tells the body what kind of world it is standing on. That information feeds back into posture, balance, and movement automatically. The animal doesn't have to think about it. The adjustment happens on its own. This is part of why paws often appear careful, even when the animal is relaxed. Each step is informed by what came just before it. When humans talk about paws, we tend to focus on their appearance, the softness, the shape, the way they curl when an animal sleeps. But from a biological perspective, what matters more is function. A paw is a structure that blends support, sensation, and flexibility into a single point of contact. It is not specialized for just one task. It performs many roles at once. That versatility is important. Animals with paws often climb, dig, turn sharply, stop suddenly, or remain perfectly still for long periods. A rigid structure would limit those behaviors. A paw allows them. Even the word paw reflects this blending. It's not a technical label tied to one exact form. It's a category created because the thing itself resists simple classification. Paws are not identical across species. A cat's paw is different from a dog's. A bear's paw is different again. Yet we recognize all of them instantly as paws because they share the same underlying logic. They are built to meet the ground gently but reliably, to feel without being overwhelmed, to support movement without demanding attention. As we move forward, we'll begin tracing where this logic came from, how early animals faced the problem of land itself, and why structures like paws offered such an enduring solution. For now, it's enough to let the word remain slightly open. Not a definition, but a recognition. A name we give to a way of touching the world that is soft, adaptive, and quietly effective. The idea of a paw begins long before paws existed at all. It begins with water. For most of Earth's history, movement happened through liquid. Bodies floated, pushed, and steered themselves through currents. The edges of limbs were shaped to fan water aside, not to carry weight. Contact with solid ground was occasional, brief, and often avoidable. Then, slowly, that changed. Around 370 million years ago, some animals began spending more time at the margins of water. Shallow wetlands, flooded plains, riverbanks that were neither fully land nor fully submerged. These environments were unstable. The ground shifted under pressure. Mud pulled at bodies. Surfaces alternated between soft and firm with every step. To move here, an animal needed more than propulsion. It needed support. The earliest limbs capable of bearing weight were not elegant. They were broad, somewhat awkward, and heavily built. What mattered was not speed, but survival. Being able to lift part of the body out of the water. Being able to pause without sinking. Being able to push forward without slipping backward. In these early stages, the ends of limbs faced a new problem. Water distributes force evenly. Land does not. When a body presses down on solid ground, all of that force concentrates at the point of contact. Without some way to spread it out, bones crack, joints strain, and movement becomes painful rather than useful. Early land animals solved this problem gradually. Their limb ends widened, their bones rearranged into structures that could press against the ground instead of slicing through it. Soft tissue thickened, skin toughened. These changes were not designed. They were selected. Animals that could support themselves more effectively were able to move farther from water. Those that couldn't remained limited to its edge. At this stage, it would be difficult to point to anything and call it a paw. But the principles were already forming. A broader surface area reduced pressure. A flexible structure adapted better to uneven terrain. A compliant contact point reduced damage from repeated use. The land itself played a role in shaping these solutions. Early terrestrial surfaces were rarely smooth. They were made of roots, stones, decaying plant matter, and shifting soil. A rigid point of contact would fail here. A surface that could adjust slightly would succeed. Over time, limbs that ended in multiple contact points proved more reliable than those that didn't. Toes emerged, not for grasping at first, but for spreading load. Joints between those toes allowed subtle shifts in balance. Soft tissue beneath them absorbed small impacts again and again. Movement became less about pushing against water and more about negotiating friction. With each step, animals had to manage gravity in a new way. They had to lift, lower, and stabilize their bodies without the buoyancy they once relied on. This required limb ends that could cushion contact and provide feedback at the same time. Sensation became important here as well. On land, knowing what you are standing on matters. Is it solid? Is it slippery? Is it hot, cold, sharp, or unstable? Early limb endings that could relay this information gave their owners an advantage. They allowed animals to adjust posture before a slip became a fall, before a misstep became an injury. This is where the story of Paws quietly begins. Not as a shape, but as a set of needs. The need to distribute weight. The need to absorb impact. The need to feel the ground while remaining protected from it. These needs did not disappear as animals became more efficient movers. They became more refined. As vertebrates diversified on land, different solutions emerged. Some lineages emphasized speed across open ground. Others favored control, climbing, digging, or stealth. But many retained the same basic approach at the end of the limb. Multiple points of contact, flexible joints, soft tissue layered over bone. What would eventually become a paw was not an invention. It was a refinement, a way of meeting the ground that worked well enough across many environments. A structure that balanced durability with sensitivity. One that could be reshaped slightly without losing its function. By the time mammals appeared, the logic was already deeply established. The ground had shaped bodies, and bodies had responded by softening their contact with it. As we continue, we'll see how this early solution became more specialized, how different animals emphasized different aspects of the same basic design, and how the simple act of standing on land quietly guided millions of years of change. For now, it's enough to picture those first hesitant steps. Bodies lifting out of water, limbs pressing into uncertain ground, contact points learning, over time, how to hold. Once an animal is fully on land, gravity becomes a constant companion. Every movement, every pause, every moment of stillness is shaped by weight pressing downward. Weight itself is not a problem. The problem is how that weight meets the ground. When a body stands, its mass is transferred through bones, joints, and muscle until it reaches the very end of the limb. At that final point, all of that force must be handled somehow. If it is not managed carefully, even simple movement becomes damaging over time. This is where pressure enters the picture. Pressure is weight concentrated into a small area. The smaller the area of contact, the greater the pressure becomes. A narrow point pressing into the ground experiences far more stress than a broad one carrying the same load. Early land animals quickly encountered this reality. A rigid, narrow limb ending pressed sharply into uneven surfaces. Joints above it absorbed repeated shock. Bones experienced stress in the same locations again and again. Animals that could spread their weight more evenly were less likely to be injured. They could stand longer, move farther, recover more easily after each step. A broader contact surface reduces pressure by distributing force across multiple points. Instead of one sharp impact, the load is shared. Instead of a sudden jolt, there is a gradual transfer of weight. Paws excel at this. When an animal steps down with a paw, the pads beneath the toes compress slightly. They flatten just enough to increase surface area at the moment of contact. This spreading effect lowers peak pressure and smooths out impact. The process is subtle. It happens in fractions of a second. But over thousands of steps each day, it makes a meaningful difference. Shock absorption is not only about comfort. It protects joints, tendons, and bones from cumulative damage. Without it, even a strong skeleton wears down faster than it can repair itself. Paws also handle uneven ground especially well. Natural surfaces are rarely flat. Small rocks, roots, and changes in elevation create constantly shifting contact points. A rigid structure struggles to adapt to these variations. A flexible one adjusts automatically. Because paws contain multiple toes connected by mobile joints, they can shift how weight is distributed with each step. One toe may bear more load while another bears less, depending on the surface beneath it. The pads respond by compressing unevenly, matching the terrain. This ability reduces slipping. It increases stability. It allows animals to move confidently across surfaces that would challenge a more rigid limb. There is also a timing element involved. When a paw contacts the ground, it does not deliver force all at once. The pads slow the transfer of weight, extending the moment of impact slightly. This reduces the peak force experienced by the limb. It is similar to how bending your knee softens a landing compared to keeping your leg straight. The movement spreads force over time as well as space. This combination of spatial and temporal buffering is one of the reasons paws are so effective. Importantly, this system works whether the animal is moving slowly or quickly. Walking, trotting, jumping, and landing all benefit from the same underlying design. The paw does not need to change structure to meet different demands. It adapts moment by moment through motion. This adaptability becomes especially valuable for animals that stop and start frequently. Predators that stalk and pounce. Animals that climb, dig, or turn sharply. Creatures that must remain still, then move suddenly without warning. In all of these cases, the paw manages weight smoothly without drawing attention to itself. From the outside, this often looks effortless, but that ease is the result of careful biological tuning. Over time, animals whose limb endings absorbed impact more effectively experienced fewer injuries. Their joints lasted longer. Their movement remained reliable across varied conditions. Evolution tends to preserve solutions that quietly reduce cost. Paws do exactly that. They lower the energetic cost of movement by reducing damage. They lower the risk of injury by softening contact. They allow bodies to interact with hard surfaces without becoming rigid themselves. As we move forward, we'll look inside these structures more closely, at the tissues that make this cushioning possible, at how softness and strength coexist in such a small space. For now, it's enough to recognize the problem paws are solving. Every step is a negotiation with gravity. Every pause is weight waiting to be supported. Paws make that negotiation quieter, steadier, and more forgiving. They turn pressure into something manageable, and in doing so, they allow movement to continue day after day. From the outside, a paw pad looks simple, smooth, dark, slightly textured. It presses gently into the ground and lifts away again, leaving little sign of the work it just did. But beneath that surface is a layered structure built for repetition. A paw pad is not a single material. It is a system. The outermost layer is skin, but not the same kind found on most of the body. It is thicker, tougher, and more resistant to wear. This skin is designed to withstand constant contact with rough surfaces, heat, cold, and moisture. It bends, but it does not tear easily. Just beneath the skin lies a dense network of connective tissue. This tissue binds the pad together and prevents it from spreading too far under pressure. Without it, the pad would flatten excessively and lose its shape. With it, the pad compresses only as much as needed, then returns to form. Below that is a layer of fatty tissue arranged in small compartments. These fat pockets are not loose or fluid. They are held in place by fibrous walls that create a honeycomb-like structure. When pressure is applied, the fat shifts slightly within these compartments, absorbing impact from multiple directions. This design allows the pad to behave like a natural shock absorber. Force arrives from the ground. The fat deforms, the connective tissue limits spread, and the skin protects the surface. Together, they soften what would otherwise be a sharp jolt. What makes this especially effective is that the pad responds differently depending on how force is applied. A slow, steady weight causes gentle compression. A sudden impact triggers a quicker, firmer response. The pad adapts automatically, without any conscious control from the animal. This responsiveness is crucial for animals that move across changing terrain. Jumping down from a height, landing on uneven ground, shifting weight while turning or stopping. Inside the pad, blood vessels weave through the tissue, supplying oxygen and nutrients. This circulation helps maintain the health of the pad despite constant use. It also plays a role in temperature regulation, especially in animals that live in cold or hot environments. Nerve endings are embedded throughout the pad as well. They detect pressure, texture, and vibration. When an animal steps on a sharp edge or an unstable surface, these nerves provide immediate feedback. The body adjusts posture or movement in response, often before the animal is fully aware of what happened. This means the pad is not just absorbing force, it is also informing movement. Importantly, the tissues inside a paw pad are resilient. They are designed to compress thousands of times a day without breaking down, but they are not indestructible. Over time, pads adapt to the demands placed on them. Animals that walk frequently on rough surfaces develop thicker, tougher pads. Those that move mostly indoors or on soft ground tend to have smoother, more sensitive pads. This adaptability reflects a balance between protection and sensation. Too much hardness reduces sensitivity. Too much softness increases the risk of injury. The body adjusts to find a workable middle ground. Unlike bone, which remodels slowly, soft tissue can change more quickly. This allows paws to respond to changes in environment within a single lifetime, not just across generations. The structure of the pad also protects the bones above it. When impact is absorbed at the surface, less force travels upward into joints and limbs. This reduces long-term wear on the skeleton. In animals that run, jump, or land frequently, this protection becomes essential. Without it, joints would degrade faster than they could repair themselves. Movement would become painful. Survival would be compromised. What's remarkable is how quietly all of this happens. A paw pad does not announce itself. It does not draw attention to its complexity. It simply meets the ground, does its work, and moves on. From the outside, the paw looks soft and unassuming. From the inside, it is carefully organized, responsive, and durable. A structure shaped not for a single dramatic moment, but for countless ordinary ones. Each step an animal takes is supported by this layered system. Each pause is held by it. Each landing is softened before the body even registers the force. As we continue, we'll begin to look beyond structure and into sensation, at how paws don't just protect the body, but also help it understand where it is. For now, it's enough to picture that quiet compression. Skin pressing into ground, fat shifting gently beneath, force being absorbed, dispersed, and released again. All of it happening without sound, without thought, and without knowing. When an animal places a paw on the ground, something more than support is happening. That moment of contact is also a moment of perception. A paw does not simply hold weight, it listens. Beneath the thick skin and cushioning layers of a paw pad lies a dense network of nerve endings. These nerves are tuned to information that never reaches language, but always reaches the body. Pressure, texture, temperature, vibration. Each step sends a quiet stream of signals upward, informing the nervous system about what kind of surface the animal is standing on. Is it firm or soft? Even or uneven? Stable or shifting? This information arrives quickly before conscious thought has time to form. The body adjusts posture and muscle tension automatically. Balance shifts slightly. Stride changes by a fraction. Weight redistributes across toes. To an observer, the movement looks smooth and continuous. But beneath that smoothness is constant sensory feedback. Paw pads are especially sensitive to vibration. Low-frequency vibrations travel easily through solid ground. Footfalls, movement nearby, subtle disturbances in the environment. Animals can feel these vibrations through their paws long before they can hear or see their source. This sensitivity allows early awareness of approaching animals, shifting terrain, or changes in the environment that might otherwise go unnoticed. Temperature is also registered through the pads. Warm stone, cool soil, cold snow. These sensations inform behavior in small ways. An animal may linger on a warm surface, adjust its gait on cold ground, shift weight away from discomfort without needing to stop or think. Texture matters as well. The difference between sand and rock, between smooth flooring and rough earth, between solid ground and something that gives slightly under pressure. Each texture produces a different pattern of sensation. The body learns these patterns through repetition. Over time, movement becomes more efficient because the ground itself is being read continuously. This sensory input plays a key role in balance. When an animal moves, It must constantly predict where its weight will go next. Small errors can lead to slips or falls. Paws reduce this risk by providing real-time feedback. If a surface begins to slide, the paw detects the change immediately. Muscles respond before the animal loses stability. The adjustment is quick, quiet, and often invisible. This is why animals appear sure-footed even on difficult terrain. They are not relying on vision alone. They are feeling their way forward, step by step. Importantly, this sensory process does not require focused attention. It happens below conscious awareness. An animal does not need to think about each step. The nervous system handles the details. Movement remains fluid, even while the environment changes. This allows attention to remain available for other tasks. Watching, listening, resting. The paw acts as a constant source of information, freeing the rest of the body from having to monitor the ground explicitly. In this way, paws are both contact points and communication channels. They connect the body to the environment in two directions at once. Force travels downward. Information travels upward. The balance between protection and sensitivity is carefully maintained. Too much sensitivity would make movement overwhelming. Too little would make it dangerous. Paw pads strike a middle ground. They filter sensation rather than blocking it. Strong impacts are softened. Subtle changes are still detected. This filtering is one reason paws feel calm to observe. They move with confidence, not hesitation. The body trusts the information it receives. Over time, animals develop a kind of familiarity with their surroundings through their paws. Paths become known. Surfaces become predictable. Movement becomes easier. Even in unfamiliar environments, paws provide enough feedback to allow safe exploration. Each step teaches the body something new. Each pause recalibrates balance. This sensory role is especially important during slow movement or stillness. When an animal stands quietly, paws continue to send information. Tiny shifts in pressure, changes in temperature, subtle vibrations passing through the ground. The body remains aware without becoming alert, stable without becoming rigid. As we move forward, we'll see how this sensory foundation works alongside other structures, how claws and pads combine to offer both grip and gentleness, how different animals emphasize different aspects of the same system. For now, it's enough to rest with the idea that paws feel the world as much as they support it, that every step is also a message, that the ground speaks softly and the body listens. You don't need to hold on to every detail. Just imagine that quiet exchange. Paw meeting surface, information flowing upward, balance adjusting without effort. When we picture a paw, it's easy to think of it as a single thing, a soft shape, a rounded surface touching the ground. But a paw is not one tool. It is a coordinated system. Pads and claws work together, each doing a different kind of work, often at the same time. Claws are made of keratin, the same material as fingernails, but arranged for strength and durability. They curve slightly. They taper to a point. They are built to grip, hook, and anchor. On their own, claws would be harsh contact points, sharp edges meeting hard surfaces. Good for holding on, but poor for steady movement. Pads soften that interaction. When an animal steps, the pads usually touch the ground first. They absorb the initial force. They stabilize the limb. Only then do the claws engage if they need to. This sequence matters. Pads create a stable base that allows claws to function precisely rather than aggressively. Instead of scraping or slipping, claws press into surfaces with control. The pad beneath them holds position, preventing overextension. In animals that climb or dig, this partnership is especially clear. The pad anchors the foot. The claw does the focused work. This division of labor allows each structure to remain specialized without becoming overwhelming. In cats, this coordination is taken even further. Cats have retractable claws, which means the claws are pulled up and away from the ground during normal walking. As a cat moves across a surface, the pads bear nearly all of the contact. The claws stay sharp, protected from wear. When a cat needs grip, the claws extend instantly. The pad beneath stabilizes the toe. The claw hooks securely without slipping. This design supports stealth. Pads reduce noise by softening contact with the ground. Claws remain hidden until needed, avoiding sound and surface damage. The result is movement that appears smooth, quiet, and deliberate. Dogs and other canines use a different strategy. Their claws are not retractable. They remain in contact with the ground during movement. This allows the claws to contribute to traction continuously. For animals built for endurance and distance, this makes sense. Claws help grip soil, snow, and uneven terrain during long runs. They assist with acceleration and turning. Pads still play a central role here. They absorb impact and stabilize each step. Claws add friction and control. Together, they create a foot that can move efficiently for hours without injury. Importantly, pads reduce the stress claws place on the limb. Without pads, claws would experience excessive force with each step. They would wear down quickly or transfer too much strain into the joints. The pad acts as a buffer, protecting both the claw and the skeleton above it. This partnership also reduces damage to surfaces. Pads prevent claws from scraping continuously across the ground. They limit how deeply claws penetrate hard materials. This matters in natural environments where excessive damage could reduce traction or increase noise. In softer environments, pads allow claws to sink just enough without losing control. The system is adaptable. On hard ground, pads dominate contact. On soft ground, claws engage more deeply. On uneven surfaces, weight shifts between toes automatically. None of this requires conscious planning. The structure itself manages the balance. This integration is one reason paws are so versatile. They can walk quietly, grip firmly, dig forcefully, or rest gently, all using the same basic components. The paw does not need to be rebuilt for different tasks. It changes emphasis instead. Claws become more active during climbing, hunting, or digging. Pads dominate during walking, standing, and resting. The transition is smooth and immediate. From the outside, this coordination is easy to miss. We notice claws when they scratch. We notice pads when they leave prints. But most of the time, the two work together invisibly. Each step involves a negotiation. How much grip is needed? How much softness is required? How much force can be applied safely? Pads and claws answer these questions together. As we continue, we'll begin focusing more closely on specific animals. We'll see how this shared system is tuned differently depending on lifestyle. How cats emphasize precision and silence. How dogs and wolves emphasize distance and durability. For now, it's enough to recognize that a paw is not just soft, and it is not just sharp. It is both layered together. Strength resting on gentleness, grip balanced by cushion. Each step reflects that balance. Quiet, controlled, and remarkably effective. When people think of paws, they often think of cats first. Not because cats are the only animals with paws, but because their movement draws attention to them in a quiet way. A cat does not rush its steps, it places them. As a cat walks, it moves digitigrade, meaning it walks on its toes rather than placing the full foot on the ground. The heel remains lifted. Only the toes and the pads beneath them make contact. This posture immediately changes how movement feels and looks. Each step is lighter. Contact time with the ground is shorter. Weight is transferred smoothly from one paw to the next. Cats also have retractable claws, and during normal walking, those claws are pulled upward and away from the surface. This means that when a cat moves across a floor, a branch, or a patch of earth, the pads are doing almost all of the work. Pads are soft. They compress slightly under weight. They adapt to tiny changes in surface texture. The result is movement that produces very little sound. Sound comes from sudden force and hard contact. Cats minimize both. Their paws arrive gently. Their weight shifts gradually. The pads absorb the final moments of impact before the body settles. This is why a cat can cross a room without announcing itself. Not because it is trying to be quiet, but because its body is built that way. Toe placement adds another layer of control. Cats place their hind paws almost exactly where their front paws have already stepped. This pattern reduces variability. The cat is stepping on ground it has already tested. If the front paw felt stable, the hind paw can follow confidently. If the front paw detected a problem, the cat adjusts before committing more weight. This creates a feedback loop. Information flows upward through the paw. The body responds. The next step reflects that response. Balance is managed continuously. When a cat turns, weight shifts across the pads and toes, rather than through a rigid joint. Small adjustments happen instantly. The cat remains centered even during sharp changes in direction. This precision is especially important for stalking behavior. When a cat moves towards something of interest, every step matters. The body stays low. Weight is distributed evenly. Pads absorb sound while toes control direction. Claws remain ready but unused until the final moment. They do not scrape the ground or catch unexpectedly. They stay sharp, protected from wear. When the moment comes, the claws extend. The pads beneath stabilize the toes. Grip appears instantly, without a loss of balance. Acceleration happens from a position of control rather than momentum. The cat does not need a long run-up. It pushes off from compressed pads and aligned joints. This design allows sudden bursts of speed, followed by immediate stillness. The same paws that carried the cat silently forward now hold it firmly in place. Even at rest, cat paws remain expressive. Toes relax and spread. Pads warm against surfaces. The paw becomes a point of comfort as well as function. Cats often tuck their paws beneath their bodies when resting. This conserves heat. It protects the pads. It creates a stable, compact posture. When a cat kneads, it presses alternately with its paws, flexing toes and pads rhythmically. This movement reflects comfort and security. It also demonstrates how responsive the paw remains, even in calm states. Throughout all of this, the paw continues to provide sensory information. Texture, temperature, subtle movement beneath the surface. The cat does not need to look down to know where it is standing. Its paws tell it. This constant feedback allows the rest of the body to remain relaxed. Movement feels deliberate rather than tense. Control replaces force. Cats did not evolve paws to be silent for human admiration. They evolved paws that solve multiple problems at once. Support, sensation, stealth, control. The silence is a side effect of efficiency. As we move on, we'll contrast this precision with a different strategy. One built less for quiet approach and more for distance and endurance, where paws must absorb impact not just for moments, but for hours at a time. For now, it's enough to picture a cat crossing a room. Each paw placed carefully, pads touching down, then lifting away. No rush, no wasted movement, just quiet control, step after step, guided by a structure that feels the ground before the body ever needs to think. Where cats move with precision and restraint, dogs and wolves move with persistence. Their paws tell a different story, shaped not by silence alone, but by distance. Dogs and wolves evolved to travel, not just in short bursts, but over long stretches of ground. Open landscapes, forests, plains, snow-covered terrain that offers little rest and few shortcuts. For these animals, the challenge was not only how to step quietly, but how to keep stepping at all. Canine paws reflect this need clearly. Their pads are thicker and tougher than those of cats. The surface skin is more calloused. The cushioning beneath is firm enough to withstand repeated impact over time. Every stride sends force through the paw again and again, thousands of times in a single day. Without adequate protection, that repetition would quickly wear the body down. Dogs and wolves are also digitigrade, walking on their toes rather than their heels. This posture lengthens the stride and allows efficient forward motion. But unlike cats, their claws remain extended during movement. Non-retractable claws play a role in endurance. They dig slightly into soil, snow, and uneven ground. They provide traction during acceleration and turning. They help prevent slipping when fatigue sets in. Pads support this work by stabilizing each step. They absorb impact. They reduce vibration traveling upward into joints. They keep movement smooth even as terrain changes. This balance allows canines to maintain a steady pace for long periods without injury. In wolves especially, endurance is not optional. It is central to survival. Wolves often travel many kilometers in a single outing. They patrol territory. They follow prey. They move as a group, maintaining pace rather than sprinting ahead. Their paws are built to handle this rhythm. Firm enough to resist breakdown, flexible enough to adjust to rocks, roots, and uneven snowpack. The pads of wolves are also well adapted to cold environments. Thick skin insulates against frozen ground. Blood flow adjusts to conserve heat. Fur between the toes provides additional protection. These adaptations allow movement even when surfaces would be painful or damaging to less protected feet. Dogs, though domesticated, retain much of this ancestral design. Working breeds especially show the same endurance-oriented structure. Sled dogs, herding dogs, guard dogs bred to patrol. Their paws develop toughness in response to use. Regular movement on varied terrain thickens pads naturally. The tissue adapts within a lifetime. This adaptability is important. Unlike cats, which often rely on controlled environments and short bursts of activity, dogs are more likely to encounter repetitive stress. Long walks, runs, extended periods on hard surfaces. Pads that can respond to these demands protect the entire limb. They reduce wear on joints. They allow movement to remain comfortable rather than punishing. Claws, too, show signs of this endurance focus. They are blunter than a cat's claws, less suited for delicate manipulation, better suited for traction and stability. The claw does not need to be sharp to be effective here. It needs to be reliable. In motion, a dog's paw often strikes the ground more firmly than a cat's. The impact is not hidden, but it is managed. Pads absorb shock, claws grip, muscles coordinate. The result is a gait that can be sustained. Even at rest, the structure reflects this purpose. Dogs often lie with paws extended, pads exposed to air, claws resting naturally against the surface. The paw is not tucked away for protection. It is ready for movement. This readiness extends to social behavior as well. Dogs use paws for stability when playing, for balance during rough interaction, for maintaining footing while changing direction suddenly. The paw must handle unpredictability, both in terrain and in interaction. While cats emphasize control and stealth, dogs and wolves emphasize continuity. They are built to keep going. Their paws reflect this priority at every level, from the thickness of the pad, to the shape of the claw, to the way weight moves through the limb. As we continue, we'll look at an even larger body encountering the same challenges, where weight increases dramatically, where stability becomes more important than speed, and where paws must scale up without losing function. Imagine a wolf moving across open ground, step after step, pads pressing firmly into earth, claws catching just enough to hold. A steady rhythm maintained not for seconds, but for hours. Endurance written quietly into the structure of the paw. When body size increases, the problem of contact with the ground changes again. Weight becomes dominant. Force multiplies. Every step carries more mass, more momentum, and more potential strain. Bears live at this scale. A bear's body is powerful, dense, and heavy, even when it moves calmly. Its paws must support that weight, not just during motion, but during stillness. Standing, turning, rising onto hind legs, digging, climbing, swimming. For bears, stability matters more than speed. Unlike cats and dogs, bears are semi-plantigrade. This means they place more of the foot on the ground when they walk. Not just the toes, but a larger portion of the underside of the foot makes contact. This increases surface area, and with increased surface area, pressure decreases. A broad paw spreads the bear's considerable weight across a wide base. Instead of force concentrating at a few small points, it is distributed evenly. This reduces stress on bones and joints. It allows the bear to stand and move without constant injury. The pads of a bear's paw are thick and expansive. They contain the same layered structure seen in other mammals: skin, connective tissue, fat, but scaled up dramatically. Each pad compresses under weight, absorbing impact slowly and deliberately. This compression is especially important when bears descend slopes or step down from height. A rigid foot would transmit shock directly upward. A padded paw slows that transfer. Claws are present here as well, but they serve a different emphasis. Bear claws are long, curved, and strong. They are not designed primarily for fine grip or stealth. They are tools for digging, tearing, and climbing. When a bear digs for roots, insects, or dens, the claws do the cutting. The pads anchor the paw, stabilizing the limb as force is applied. Without that stable base, digging would be inefficient and damaging. Climbing shows this relationship clearly. Despite their size, many bears climb well. They rely on claws to hook into bark and wood. Pads press firmly against the surface, increasing friction and balance. Again, the paw functions as a coordinated system rather than a single structure. Swimming adds another dimension. In water, the broad paws act like paddles. Pads push against water. Claws create turbulence that increases thrust. The same structure that stabilizes a bear on land helps propel it through rivers and lakes. This versatility is important because bears do not specialize narrowly. They forage, they travel, they rest, they adapt. Their paws must support all of these behaviors without being optimized for just one. Because bears move more slowly than smaller predators, their paws prioritize reliability over finesse. Each step is deliberate. Weight shifts carefully from one limb to the next. This slow transfer of mass reduces peak forces. It allows the pads time to compress fully before releasing again. Movement becomes smooth rather than abrupt. At rest, a bear's paws often appear relaxed. Toes spread. Pads flatten slightly under body weight. The paw becomes a stable platform rather than an active tool. This ability to remain still without strain matters. Bears spend long periods resting, conserving energy. Their paws must support this stillness as comfortably as they support motion. The semi-plantigrade stance also improves balance. When a bear rises onto its hind legs, the broad contact area provides a secure base. The body remains upright without excessive muscular effort. This posture allows bears to reach, observe, and interact with their environment safely. Importantly, the bear's paw shows how the same basic design can be scaled without losing function. The core principles remain: broad contact, cushioning, sensory input, integrated claws. What changes is emphasis. Speed becomes less important. Stability becomes essential. Control replaces quickness. Evolution did not need to invent something new for large mammals. It adjusted an existing solution. The paw grew broader. The pads thickened. The stance flattened slightly. The result is a structure capable of supporting one of the heaviest land mammals without constant injury. Soon, we'll look at another challenge paws must face. Not weight or distance, but environment. Cold ground, hot surfaces, snow, ice, and heat that test the limits of skin and tissue. That's how a bear moving through its world. Heavy, but not clumsy. Grounded, but not rigid. Each paw meeting the earth steadily, spreading weight, holding balance. Strength expressed not through force alone, but through stability that lasts. The ground does not always feel the same. It changes with season, weather, and place. Cold stone in winter, hot sand in summer, snow that numbs, ice that slips, dry earth that cracks, wet ground that pulls. For animals that live close to the surface, these changes matter. Every step becomes an interaction not just with terrain, but with temperature. Paws play a quiet role in managing that interaction. One of the most important features of a paw pad is insulation. The thick layers of skin and fat that cushion impact also slow the transfer of heat. Cold from frozen ground takes longer to reach deeper tissues. Heat from sun-warmed surfaces is buffered before it spreads upward. This insulation does not make paws immune to temperature. It moderates it. In cold environments, this moderation is essential. Standing directly on snow or ice would quickly draw heat out of unprotected tissue. Pads reduce that loss by trapping warmth within their layered structure. Many animals that live in cold climates also have fur growing between their toes. This fur acts like a soft barrier, reducing direct contact with snow and ice. It traps air, which further slows heat exchange. The result is a paw that can touch cold ground without freezing immediately. Movement remains possible. Circulation continues. Blood flow within the paw also adjusts to temperature. In cold conditions, vessels constrict slightly, reducing heat loss. In warmer conditions, they open more fully, allowing excess heat to dissipate. This regulation happens automatically. The animal does not need to choose it. The body responds to conditions as they change. In very cold environments, some animals use a countercurrent heat exchange system in their limbs. Warm blood flowing toward the paw passes near cooler blood returning toward the body. Heat transfers between them, warming the returning blood and cooling the outgoing flow slightly. This reduces overall heat loss while still allowing the paw to function. Hot environments present a different challenge. When ground temperatures rise, especially on exposed surfaces like sand or rock, tissue can overheat quickly. Paw pads resist this in several ways. The thick skin of the pad is more resistant to heat damage than thinner skin. The cushioning fat layer slows heat transfer, and blood flow increases to carry heat away from the surface. Animals may also adjust behavior subtly. Shifting weight, shortening steps, seeking shade, standing still rather than moving unnecessarily. The paw provides enough protection to make these adjustments possible without immediate harm. Cracking and drying are additional concerns in harsh climates. Extreme cold can dry skin. Extreme heat can harden it. Paw pads resist cracking better than most skin because of their structure. The thick outer layer and flexible connective tissue allow expansion and compression without tearing. Natural oils help maintain pliability. Still, pads reflect the environments animals live in. Those that move across rough, dry ground develop thicker, tougher pads. Those that live in damp or snowy regions maintain softer tissue beneath insulating layers. This adaptability allows paws to remain functional across a wide range of conditions. Snow presents a unique challenge because it combines cold with instability. It shifts under weight. It hides uneven ground beneath. Paws handle this by spreading weight across a larger area. The pad compresses snow rather than cutting through it sharply. This reduces sinking and slipping. In animals like wolves and bears, the broad shape of the paw helps distribute mass over snowpack. Combined with fur between the toes, this creates a kind of natural snowshoe effect. Ice, by contrast, offers little grip. Here, claws become more important. They catch edges and irregularities. Pads stabilize contact so claws can engage without sliding. In hot climates, paws also face abrasive surfaces. Rocky ground heated by the sun can damage softer tissue. Over time, pads thicken and harden in response. This thickening is gradual. It reflects repeated exposure rather than sudden change. The paw adjusts to what it encounters most often. Importantly, this adjustment happens within an animal's lifetime. Paws are not fixed at birth. They respond to experience. This makes them resilient across environments that change seasonally. Cold winters, warm summers, dry periods followed by wet ones. The same basic structure continues to function, shifting emphasis as needed. As we move forward, we'll begin looking at contrasts. Why paws evolve for flexibility rather than uniform hardness. Why some animals chose different solutions entirely. It's enough to recognize that paws are not just built for movement. They are built for weather, for surfaces that change temperature and texture without warning. Each step is not only a negotiation with gravity, but with climate. When we talk about paws, it's natural to notice that not all animals use them. Some animals meet the ground in a very different way. Hooves. Hooves look almost opposite to paws. Hard, where paws are soft. Narrow, where paws spread. Rigid, where paws flex. It might be tempting to think of one as better than the other, but that isn't how evolution works. These are not competing designs. They are answers to different questions. Hooves evolved in animals that faced a specific set of challenges. Wide open spaces, firm ground, the need to move quickly in straight lines, the need to conserve energy over long distances without frequent stopping. In these environments, speed and efficiency mattered more than versatility. A hoof is essentially a hardened extension of a toe. Instead of multiple flexible toes sharing contact with the ground, weight is concentrated into a smaller, tougher structure. This creates a stable, durable point of contact that resists wear. Because hooves are rigid, very little energy is lost to compression. Each step transfers force efficiently. Movement becomes economical. This is especially useful for animals that run long distances across open terrain. Horses, deer, antelope. Their movement patterns are rhythmic and repetitive. The ground beneath them is relatively predictable. The priority is forward motion. Paws, by contrast, are built for environments that change constantly. Forests, rocky slopes, uneven ground, snow, mud, roots, and obstacles. In these settings, adaptability matters more than raw efficiency. A paw can spread, compress, and adjust its contact points. a hoof cannot. This flexibility allows animals with paws to climb, turn sharply, stop suddenly, and navigate complex surfaces. But that same flexibility comes with a cost. More energy is absorbed with each step. Less energy is returned directly to forward motion. Hooves accept that trade-off in the opposite direction. They sacrifice fine control in exchange for durability and speed. Because hooves concentrate force into a smaller area, they require strong bones and joints above them. The limb must be aligned carefully to handle repeated impact. This alignment favors straight-ahead movement. Turning sharply at high speed becomes risky. Uneven terrain becomes more dangerous. Slipping or misplacing a hoof can have serious consequences. This is why hoofed animals often rely on open spaces where obstacles are minimal and visibility is high. Their bodies are shaped around escape through speed, rather than maneuvering through complexity. Paws do not commit to that strategy. A paw spreads weight across multiple points. It absorbs impact. It allows small adjustments mid-step. This makes paws better suited for varied terrain. Not faster in a straight line, but more reliable across many conditions. There is also a difference in how animals interact with the ground beyond movement. Hooved animals rarely use their feet for manipulation. The hoof is a tool for locomotion almost exclusively. Other body parts handle interaction with the environment. Animals with paws, however, often use them for more than walking. Grasping, digging, batting, holding. That versatility requires flexibility and sensitivity. Hard, rigid hooves would limit these behaviors. Durability shows up differently as well. Hooves grow continuously and wear down gradually. They are built to tolerate abrasion. Paws rely on thickened skin and cushioning, rather than hardness alone. Both systems require maintenance. Both reflect the surfaces the animal encounters most often. Neither approach is inherently superior. Each is specialized. Where hooves shine is efficiency on predictable ground. Where paws excel is adaptability on unpredictable ground. Evolution does not aim for perfection. It aims for adequacy within context. Animals with hooves did not need the fine-grained control paws provide. Animals with paws did not need the extreme efficiency hooves offer. Each lineage followed a different path based on the environments it encountered and the problems it needed to solve. Understanding this contrast helps clarify why paws persisted. They were not replaced because their flexibility remained useful. Their ability to manage varied surfaces, adjust to changing conditions, and support multiple behaviors continued to offer value. As we move on, we'll turn toward our own bodies. Why humans did not follow the path of paws or hooves, and how walking upright reshaped our relationship with the ground entirely. Hardness and softness, speed and adaptability. Different answers to the same fundamental question: how to move across the land without breaking down along the way. At some point in our own story, the relationship between body and ground changed direction. Humans did not lose paws. They never had them in the first place. Our lineage followed a different solution to the same ancient problem: how to move across land without breaking down. The shift began gradually, long before modern humans appeared. Early hominins still climbed, still grasped, still relied on trees for safety and food. But over time, more and more movement happened on open ground. Standing upright altered everything. When the body rises onto two legs, weight no longer spreads across four contact points. It funnels downward through a single line on each side. This concentrates force differently and demands a new kind of structure at the end of the limb. Feet replace paws, not because paws failed, but because upright walking required something else. Human feet are built around arches. These arches act like springs. When the foot strikes the ground, the arch compresses slightly. As weight shifts forward, it releases stored energy, assisting the next step. This design favors efficiency over softness. Instead of absorbing impact through thick pads, humans distribute force through bone alignment and elastic tissue. The heel contacts the ground first, taking the initial load. Weight then rolls forward across the foot before pushing off through the toes. This rolling motion reduces muscular effort over long distances. It is especially effective for steady walking. Humans became endurance walkers rather than burst movers. Rather than sprinting briefly or stalking silently, early humans benefited from being able to travel for hours. Following herds, foraging across wide areas, returning to shared shelter. Feet supported this lifestyle by favoring repeatable, economical motion. Hands took on the roles paws often perform in other animals. Grasping, manipulation, fine sensory exploration. As the feet specialized for walking, the hands became free to handle tools, food, and communication. This division of labor reduced the need for feet that could grip, dig, or manipulate objects directly. Sensitivity did not disappear. It relocated. Human feet still contain nerve endings, but far fewer than paws. The emphasis shifted away from reading the ground in detail and toward maintaining balance through vision and inner ear feedback. This allowed attention to remain forward-facing rather than downward. The upright posture also changed how impact was managed. Instead of pads compressing beneath the toes, humans rely on alignment. The ankle, knee, hip, and spine share the load. Shock travels upward through joints designed to absorb and redistribute force. This system works well when posture is stable and movement is controlled. It works less well when surfaces are unpredictable. This is one reason humans are more cautious on uneven terrain. Our feet are not built to adjust mid-step with the same immediacy as paws. We compensate by slowing down, watching our footing, or using tools. Shoes became an extension of this adaptation. Rather than evolving thick pads and claws, humans externalize protection. Footwear provides cushioning, grip, and insulation that the foot itself does not fully supply. This flexibility allowed humans to inhabit many environments without changing foot anatomy dramatically. Cold climates, hot ground, rocky terrain. Instead of the foot adapting biologically, tools filled the gap. There is also a trade-off in stability. Standing upright reduces the base of support. Balance becomes more delicate. Falls carry higher risk. Paws spread weight across multiple contact points. Feet concentrated. To manage this, humans evolved refined balance control, muscle coordination, reflexes, postural awareness. Much of human movement is about maintaining vertical alignment rather than negotiating ground texture. The difference shows up clearly in stillness. An animal with paws can stand for long periods with minimal effort. Weight spreads naturally. Pads adjust. A human standing still must constantly make small muscular corrections. The body sways slightly. Muscles remain active. Our stillness is dynamic rather than passive. None of this makes feet inferior. They are simply optimized for a different relationship with the ground. Where paws emphasize adaptation at the point of contact, feet emphasize efficiency across distance. Where paws feel the ground directly, feet rely more on vision and planning. Humans traded immediate sensory feedback for forward-facing mobility. They traded flexibility at the surface for efficiency over time. This choice shaped everything that followed. Tool use, migration, settlement. It also explains why humans often feel disconnected from the ground beneath them. We are not built to read it with the same intimacy. We step over it rather than into it. Understanding this divergence helps clarify why paws remain so widespread in other animals. They continue to solve problems humans no longer faced. Different bodies, different priorities, different answers. And as we continue, we'll narrow in on one specific detail that ties many of these stories together. Not posture, not species, but the simple choice to walk on toes instead of heels, and what that changes about everything that comes after. One of the quiet details that separates paws from human feet is something easy to overlook: where the limb actually meets the ground. Many animals with paws do not place their heels down when they walk. They walk on their toes. This posture is called digitigrade movement, and it changes nearly everything about how the body moves through space. When an animal walks digitigrade, the heel is lifted off the ground. The ankle sits higher. The limb appears longer than it really is. Each step covers more distance with the same amount of motion. This is one reason digitigrade animals often look light on their feet. They are quite literally spending less time in contact with the ground. Shorter contact time means less friction slowing movement. It also means less time absorbing impact, which might sound like a disadvantage, but paws compensate for this in other ways. Pads handle the brief but repeated contact. They compress quickly and rebound just as fast. This allows the limb to load and unload efficiently without becoming rigid. Walking on toes also changes how muscles and tendons are arranged. In digitigrade animals, long tendons store and release energy with each step. Muscles higher up the limb generate force. Tendons closer to the ground act like elastic bands. This separation reduces muscular effort over time. Instead of muscles doing all the work, elastic tissue assists movement. The result is a gait that feels springy rather than heavy. This design favors speed and responsiveness. An animal can accelerate quickly. It can change direction with minimal delay. It can lift off the ground rapidly if needed. For predators, this is especially valuable. The ability to move suddenly, without warning, depends on minimizing contact with the ground. Digitigrade posture also works well with padded contact surfaces. Because the heel is not absorbing impact directly, something else must. Pads take on that role. They soften the initial contact. They stabilize the toes. They protect joints above them from sharp forces. Without pads, toe walking on hard ground would be punishing. With pads, it becomes sustainable. This posture also alters balance. When walking on toes, the body's center of mass stays slightly forward. Balance is active rather than passive. The animal is always ready to move. This readiness shows even at rest. A digitigrade animal can transition from stillness to motion almost instantly. There is no need to roll forward from a heel strike. The body is already poised. In contrast, humans walk plantigrade, placing the entire foot, including the heel, on the ground. This increases stability during slow movement and standing. It reduces the need for constant muscular adjustment. But it also lengthens contact time and reduces stride efficiency at higher speeds. Digitigrade posture sacrifices some stability in exchange for mobility. Paws help manage that trade-off. The toes can spread slightly on contact. Pads adjust shape. Claws engage if needed. All of this happens quickly, often within a single step. Importantly, digitigrade walking is not just about speed. It is about responsiveness. Animals that walk on toes can react to changes in terrain mid-stride. If the ground shifts, the paw detects it. Muscles respond immediately. The step adjusts. This responsiveness reduces falls and missteps, even on uneven surfaces. It also supports behaviors beyond locomotion. Standing on toes allows finer control when climbing. It enables precise placement during stalking. It allows animals to balance on narrow surfaces more easily. The limb becomes an active participant in movement rather than a passive support. Over evolutionary time, this posture proved effective for animals that needed versatility. Not just straight-line travel, but turning, stopping, climbing, and reacting. Paws and digitigrade posture evolved together. One without the other would be less effective. Toe walking requires cushioning. Pads provide it. Pads benefit from reduced contact time. Toe walking supplies it. Together, they create a movement system that favors adaptability over stillness. Understanding this helps explain why paws feel alive even when an animal is barely moving. There is always a readiness built into the structure, a sense of potential energy waiting to be used. Each step begins already prepared for the next one. And as we move deeper into how paws function beyond walking, we'll see that this readiness extends into play, communication, and social interaction. Because once a structure becomes responsive, it rarely limits itself to a single purpose. Movement is not the only reason animals evolve paws. Once a structure becomes flexible, sensitive, and responsive, it often finds new uses. Paws did exactly that. In many animals, paws are involved in play long before they are used with precision in adulthood. Young animals bat at objects. They swat gently. They pounce, miss, and try again. These movements are not random. They refine coordination. Through play, animals learn how much force to apply, how quickly to retract, how to place a paw without losing balance. Pads make this learning safer. Soft contact reduces injury. Claws can remain partially disengaged. Mistakes are forgiven by the structure itself. Play becomes a low-risk environment for developing control. Paws are also used for exploration. When an animal encounters something unfamiliar, it often reaches out with a paw before committing its whole body. A light touch tests texture and resistance. sensory feedback flows upward. Is it solid? Does it move? Is it warm or cold? This cautious engagement allows animals to gather information without danger. In social settings, paws become tools for communication. A gentle tap can signal invitation. A brief contact can establish boundaries. The pressure, duration, and placement of a paw convey intent. Because pads are soft and sensitive, these interactions can be subtle. A paw resting lightly on another animal communicates something very different from a swat or a push. Animals learn to interpret these differences quickly. Social harmony depends on it. During play between adults, paws help manage intensity. Claws may be sheathed. Pads absorb contact. Movements remain exaggerated but controlled. This allows rough play without constant injury. Paws also appear in caregiving behavior. Parents use paws to reposition offspring, to steady them, to pull them closer. The softness of the pad reduces harm. The sensitivity allows precise placement. Even grooming behaviors often involve paws. Animals use paws to hold themselves steady while licking, to spread saliva across fur, to reach areas the mouth alone cannot access. In cats, this is especially clear. A cat licks its paw, then uses it to wipe its face and ears. The paw becomes an extension of the grooming process. This behavior reinforces bodily awareness. The animal feels its own contours through the paw. Feedback helps guide movement accurately. Communication through paws is not always gentle. A raised paw can be a warning. A sudden swat can establish dominance or end an interaction. Here again, pads moderate impact. The presence of cushioning allows signals to be delivered clearly without escalating into injury every time. This is important in social groups where repeated interactions occur. Animals must negotiate relationships without constant harm. Because paws are expressive, they often become focal points in social observation. Animals watch each other's paws. They learn to anticipate movement, a slight shift in weight, a lifted paw, a change in stance. These cues inform the next action. This expressiveness is possible because paws are not locked into a single function. They are mobile. They are responsive. They are visible. In contrast, rigid feet or hooves limit this kind of communication. They are less capable of subtle, graded interaction. Paws allow animals to interact with the world at arm's length, so to speak. They create distance when needed. They reduce distance when appropriate. This flexibility supports learning, bonding, and conflict resolution. Importantly, these behaviors are not secondary to locomotion. They are part of why paws persisted. A structure that can move, feel, cushion, and communicate becomes deeply embedded in daily life. It is used constantly, not just when traveling. Over time, this multi-use value reinforces the evolutionary choice. Paws were not only good for walking, they were good for living. As we continue, we'll look at another quiet use of paws, one that happens in stillness rather than motion, in maintenance rather than interaction. Because once a structure becomes central to survival, it often becomes central to care as well. Some of the most important work paws do happens when nothing else is moving. Grooming is slow, repetitive, quiet, and paws are deeply involved in it. For many animals, grooming is not just about cleanliness, It is about maintenance, about keeping the body functioning smoothly over time. Paws play a central role because they sit at the intersection of reach, sensitivity, and control. In cats, this role is especially visible. A cat does not groom randomly. The movements follow a pattern. The tongue wets the fur. The paw follows, spreading saliva evenly across the face, ears, and head. The paw becomes a soft tool, flexible enough to conform to curves, sensitive enough to detect resistance, gentle enough to avoid injury near eyes and ears. Pads are key here. Their slightly textured surface holds moisture. This allows saliva to be distributed rather than wiped away. The cat can groom efficiently without excessive licking. Sensory feedback from the paw guides each motion. Pressure adjusts automatically. The paw moves more lightly over sensitive areas and more firmly where fur is thicker. This precision matters. Grooming removes dirt, loose hair, and parasites. It also redistributes oils that protect the skin and fur. An uneven pass would leave patches exposed or irritated. Paws help regulate that balance. Other animals use paws differently, but with similar intent. Dogs often use their paws to steady themselves while grooming hard-to-reach areas. They shift weight carefully. Pads grip the ground just enough to maintain balance. When a dog scratches, the paw becomes a rhythmic tool. Claws provide the contact point. Pads stabilize the limb so force stays controlled. Even this repetitive motion is guided by sensation. The dog adjusts speed and pressure based on feedback from the skin. Grooming also reinforces bodily awareness. By repeatedly touching their own bodies, animals maintain a detailed internal map of themselves. They feel changes in fur texture. They detect irritation early. They notice small injuries before they become serious. Paws provide the sensitivity needed for this awareness. Because paws are used so often, animals are careful with them. Movements are deliberate. Pressure is moderated. This caution reduces self-inflicted injury during grooming. There is also a calming aspect to these behaviors. Grooming often occurs during rest periods, after eating, before sleep. The repetitive motions, guided by paw contact, help settle the nervous system. Muscle tension decreases. Breathing slows. The paw becomes part of a transition from activity to rest. In social animals, grooming sometimes extends beyond the self. Mutual grooming strengthens bonds. One animal uses its paws to steady another, to adjust position, to maintain balance during close contact. Here again, softness matters. Pads reduce discomfort. Sensitivity prevents missteps. From a biological perspective, grooming supports health in subtle ways. Clean paws reduce the spread of bacteria to other parts of the body. Well-maintained pads are less likely to crack or become infected. Attention to the paws themselves becomes part of overall care. Animals often lick their paws specifically. They remove debris. They moisten the skin. They check for discomfort. This self-monitoring happens without urgency. It is folded into daily rhythm. Importantly, grooming behavior adapts to environment. Animals in dusty or sandy regions groom differently than those in snowy or wet climates. Paw use reflects what the body encounters most often. This adaptability again shows why paws persisted as flexible tools. They support not only movement through the world, but upkeep within it. Without paws, grooming would rely entirely on mouth or body contortions. Sensitivity would be reduced. Precision would suffer. Paws make care easier, safer, and more efficient. They allow animals to maintain themselves quietly, without outside assistance. Day after day, season after season. As we move deeper into the life of the paw, the focus shifts again. From daily care to wear and recovery. From routine use to the marks that use leaves behind. Because even the most resilient structures are shaped by what they endure and by how they heal. For all their resilience, paws are not indestructible. They are designed for constant use, but constant use always leaves traces. Every surface an animal walks on presses back. Heat, cold, roughness, repetition. Over time, paws respond. Paw pads are tough, but they are still living tissue. They can bruise, they can tear. They can become irritated or worn down when conditions change suddenly. What makes paws remarkable is not that they avoid damage entirely, but that they adapt to it. One of the most important forms of adaptation is thickening. When paws experience repeated stress, the outer layers of the pad gradually become denser. Skin cells accumulate. The surface becomes more resistant to abrasion. This process happens slowly and continuously. There is no clear moment when a pad becomes tough enough. It adjusts based on use. Animals that move frequently on rough ground develop thicker pads. Those that spend more time on soft surfaces retain smoother ones. The body responds to environment rather than following a fixed blueprint. This adaptability helps explain why sudden changes can cause problems. An animal accustomed to soft terrain may experience soreness or injury when moved to hard or abrasive ground. The pads have not yet thickened to meet the new demands. Given time, they often do. Healing, however, takes patience. Because paws are used constantly, injuries heal more slowly than they might in less active tissue. Pads cannot be fully rested without limiting movement. Weight continues to pass through them even during recovery. Blood flow supports healing, but repeated pressure can reopen small wounds. This creates a balance between protection and use. Animals instinctively adjust behavior when paws are injured. They shift weight. They move more carefully. They reduce unnecessary travel. These changes are subtle. There is no dramatic immobilization. The body protects the injured area while still functioning. Calluses form as part of this process. They are not flaws. They are records of interaction with the environment. Each thickened area reflects where pressure concentrates. Each hardened spot tells a story about movement patterns and surfaces encountered. Importantly, calluses on paws remain flexible. They do not become rigid like horn. They preserve some elasticity, allowing continued shock absorption. This balance is crucial. Too much hardness would eliminate sensitivity. Too much softness would increase injury. The paw maintains a middle ground. Pads also adapt chemically. Natural oils help maintain moisture. They prevent cracking in dry conditions. They allow the surface to bend without splitting. In cold environments, these oils contribute to flexibility despite low temperatures. In warm environments, they reduce excessive drying. Infections are another risk. Because paws contact the ground directly, they encounter bacteria and debris constantly. Minor cuts can become entry points. The body responds with thick skin, immune activity, and grooming behaviors. Animals lick their paws to clean them. Saliva helps remove debris and may reduce bacterial load. This behavior is not panic. It is routine maintenance. Over time, animals learn the limits of their own paws. They adjust pace and posture. They avoid surfaces that cause discomfort when possible. This learning is not abstract. It is embodied. Pain and sensation guide behavior. The paw informs the rest of the body when conditions are unfavorable. Adaptation also occurs across generations. Animals living in harsher environments tend to inherit traits that support tougher pads or better circulation. Over long periods, populations diverge slightly based on terrain and climate. But even within a single lifetime, the paw remains responsive. It thickens when needed. It heals when given time. It signals when limits are being reached. This responsiveness is why paws endure despite constant exposure. They are not static tools. They are living systems that adjust to what the world asks of them. Understanding this helps explain why paws remain so central to animal life. They absorb not only impact, but experience. They change as the animal changes. The ground leaves its mark, but the paw answers back, not by resisting, but by adapting. That quiet exchange, repeated endlessly, is what allows movement to continue without collapse. Most paws alive today do not spend their lives on the terrain that shaped them. They walk across tile, hardwood, concrete, carpet, asphalt. Surfaces that did not exist for the vast majority of evolutionary history. Flat, uniform, often harder or smoother than soil, stone, or forest floor. And yet, paws continue to work. They were not redesigned for houses or cities. No new bones appeared. No new structures emerged. The same paws that once pressed into dirt and leaf litter now cross kitchen floors and sidewalks, carrying bodies just as reliably as they always have. Human-made surfaces change how contact feels. Hard floors reflect force instead of absorbing it. Smooth surfaces reduce friction. Repetition increases. A paw stepping onto tile receives a sharper rebound than one stepping onto soil. A paw crossing carpet experiences more drag. Concrete offers durability but little give. These differences matter, but they do not overwhelm the system. Pads compress differently depending on surface hardness. On hard floors, they flatten slightly more to absorb shock. On soft surfaces, they remain firmer, maintaining stability. This adjustment happens automatically. The animal does not plan it. The tissues respond in real time. Claws also change their role indoors. On smooth flooring, claws may slip slightly instead of gripping. Animals compensate by shortening stride, lowering speed, or spreading toes more deliberately. You can often see this in subtle ways. Slower turns, cautious acceleration, pauses before movement. On textured surfaces like carpet or outdoor pavement, claws engage more effectively. Pads stabilize the contact so traction feels secure. Over time, animals learn the limits of each surface. They avoid sprinting where grip is unreliable. They rest where footing feels predictable. This learning is embodied rather than conscious. It emerges from repeated experience, where patterns change as well. Some human-made surfaces reduce abrasion. Carpet and soft flooring cause less pad thickening than rough outdoor terrain. Pads may remain smoother, more sensitive. Other surfaces increase stress. Hot pavement, rough concrete, long stretches of uniform hardness. Here, pads may thicken over time, responding to increased pressure and friction. This adaptation does not require structural redesign. The same biological mechanisms apply. Skin layers adjust. Tissue density shifts. The paw remains what it has always been, responsive rather than fixed. Gait often changes indoors. Animals take shorter steps. They distribute weight more evenly. They pause more often. These adjustments reduce slipping and manage unfamiliar feedback from flat, reflective surfaces. You might notice how a cat places its paws more carefully on a slick floor, or how a dog hesitates before turning sharply on tile. These are not signs of confusion. They are signs of a system adapting. Even noise becomes part of the equation. Hard floors amplify sound. Pads still reduce impact, but the environment reflects it back. Animals may move more slowly or place paws more deliberately in response. Again, no instruction is needed. The sensory feedback loop handles it. What's striking is how little effort this requires. Paws were not optimized for couches or hallways. They were optimized for variability. Because of that, they function well in places evolution never anticipated. This speaks to the strength of the original design, not because it was perfect, but because it was flexible. Human-made environments often demand uniformity, straight lines, repeated surfaces, predictable layouts. Paws meet this uniformity with adaptability rather than specialization. They do not lock into a single pattern. They continue adjusting step by step. Even aging animals rely on this adaptability. As joints stiffen or balance changes, paws compensate subtly. Pads distribute weight differently. Stride shortens. Contact becomes more deliberate. The paw remains a mediator between body and surface, even as the body changes. This persistence matters. It shows that evolution does not need to predict the future to succeed. It only needs to produce structures that respond well to change. Paws were shaped in forests, plains, snow, and stone. Their success indoors is a side effect of that versatility. They did not evolve for houses. They evolved for uncertainty. That is why they continue to function without redesign. Why they still absorb, sense, and adjust. Why animals move through modern spaces with quiet competence. If you watch closely, you can see it happening. A paw compressing slightly on hard floor. Toes spreading just enough. Weight settling, then lifting again. No struggle, no rethinking. Just a familiar structure meeting a new surface, doing what it has always done, adapting in place. Across millions of years of change, one question quietly answers itself. Why did paws remain? Evolution is often described as a process of constant improvement, but that framing can be misleading. Most of the time, evolution is conservative. It keeps what works. Paws worked. They did not solve a single problem. they solve many at once. A paw supports weight. It absorbs impact. It senses the ground. It adapts to uneven surfaces. It assists in gripping, digging, playing, grooming, and communicating. Any structure that performs this many roles becomes difficult to replace. Replacing a paw would require another structure that could do all of these things without introducing new problems. Such pressure rarely exists. For many animals, paws provided adequate solutions across a wide range of environments. They worked in forests and plains, on rock and soil, in snow and heat. This breadth reduced the need for specialization. Animals with paws could survive without being perfectly optimized for one condition. They could tolerate variation. That tolerance is valuable. Environments change over time. Climate shifts. Vegetation moves. Terrain evolves. A structure that works reasonably well across many conditions often outlasts one that excels in only a narrow context. Paws also scale well. They function in small animals and large ones, in light bodies and heavy ones. The same basic design expands or contracts without losing integrity. This scalability reduces evolutionary risk. Lineages do not need to reinvent limb endings as body size changes. Another reason paws persisted is modularity. Pads can thicken or thin. Claws can become longer or shorter. Toe arrangement can shift subtly. These adjustments happen without altering the core structure. Evolution favors such systems because they allow fine-tuning without overhaul. Small changes can improve performance without destabilizing the whole. Paws also interact well with behavior. Animals adjust how they use their paws based on context. They walk differently on ice than on dirt. They climb when needed. They rest when conditions are unfavorable. Behavior reduces the need for anatomical change. If a structure can be used flexibly, selection pressure lessens. There was also little incentive to abandon paws once other systems adapted around them. Muscles, tendons, and nervous systems evolved in coordination with paws. Gait patterns formed. Balance systems tuned themselves. Replacing the paw would require reworking everything upstream. Evolution rarely does that unless forced. Instead, it tends to modify what is already present. This is why paws appear in such a wide range of mammals. Carnivores, omnivores, small climbers, large wanderers. Each lineage emphasized different aspects: stealth, endurance, strength, stability. But the underlying structure remained recognizable. Even when alternative solutions emerged, hooves, for example, they did so in response to specific pressures: open terrain, high-speed escape, straight-line travel. Those pressures did not apply universally. In mixed environments, paws retain their advantage. Evolution favors adequacy over perfection. A structure does not need to be ideal. It needs to be good enough, reliably. Paws met that standard repeatedly. They did not require constant refinement to remain useful. They tolerated change rather than resisting it. This tolerance extended into modern environments as well. Paws did not fail when faced with new surfaces or behaviors. They adjusted. That adaptability reduced selective pressure to alter them further. It is also worth noting that paws integrate well with learning. young animals refine their use through experience. The structure supports learning rather than limiting it. A rigid system leaves little room for behavioral adjustment. A flexible one invites it. Over long spans of time, this partnership between anatomy and behavior becomes stable. The paw did not persist because it was optimal in every scenario. It persisted because it was rarely a liability. It did not prevent survival. It did not demand constant change. It quietly met the demands placed upon it. In evolutionary terms, that is often enough. The ground did not ask for more. The body did not need more. So the paw remained, and remained still. A structure shaped by countless steps, each one unremarkable on its own. Each one reinforcing the same simple truth, that sometimes the best solution is the one that continues working, long after alternatives have come and gone. By this point, it becomes clear that a paw is not just a body part. It is a meeting place. Every step brings two worlds together. The internal world of bone, muscle, and nerve, and the external world of ground, temperature, texture, and resistance. The paw sits exactly at that boundary. It translates intention into contact. When an animal decides to move, that decision does not travel directly into motion. It passes through joints, through tendons, through muscle contractions that generate force. The paw receives all of that force and decides how it will arrive. Softly or firmly, quickly or slowly, spread out or concentrated. In this sense, the paw behaves less like a tool and more like an interface. It does not simply act. It interprets. An interface is something that allows two systems to communicate without merging. The body remains the body. The environment remains the environment. The paw manages the exchange between them. When the ground is forgiving, the paw firms slightly, preserving stability. When the ground is harsh, it yields more, protecting the body above. When the surface is unpredictable, it samples cautiously before committing weight. None of this requires conscious planning. The structure itself negotiates. Pads cushion force, but also relay sensation. Claws grip, but also release. Toes spread and gather, constantly recalibrating. This balance between softness and strength is what makes the paw effective as an interface. Too much softness would blur information. Too much rigidity would damage the system. The paw filters rather than blocks. It reduces noise without eliminating signal. Strong impacts are softened. Subtle changes still register. This filtering allows the nervous system to focus on what matters. Is the surface stable? Is it safe to move forward? Does the body need to adjust? The paw answers these questions continuously. Importantly, this translation works in both directions. Force travels downward into the ground. Information travels upward into the body. The animal does not need to look at its paws to know where it stands. It feels its position through them. This feedback loop stabilizes movement. It allows correction before error becomes injury. It maintains balance without tension. Because the paw is living tissue, it adapts over time. Repeated interactions shape it. Patterns of movement leave traces. The interface learns. If an animal moves often on rough ground, the paw thickens slightly. If movement is light and infrequent, sensitivity remains high. The interface tunes itself to typical conditions. This tuning does not lock it into place. It remains flexible enough to handle change. That flexibility is why paws function across so many behaviors. Walking, running, climbing, standing, resting. In each case, the same interface adjusts emphasis. Cushioning dominates in landing. Grip dominates in climbing. Sensation dominates during stillness. The structure remains the same. The function shifts. This is one reason paws feel so natural to observe. They do not announce their complexity. They do not appear mechanical. They move smoothly because they are constantly negotiating behind the scenes. Even when an animal is still, the paw remains active. Tiny adjustments in pressure, minute shifts in weight, ongoing communication with the ground. The interface never shuts off. From a broader perspective, this reframing helps dissolve the question of why paws exist at all. They exist because bodies need ways to meet the world without breaking. They are not just for movement, they are for contact. They allow animals to inhabit space rather than collide with it. Seen this way, the paw is less an appendage and more a conversation between mass and surface, between intention and resistance. Each step says something quietly about balance, about trust in the ground, about how much force can be applied safely, and the ground answers back. This exchange is constant, but never loud, never dramatic. It is simply how bodies stay in place while moving forward. In the next moments of this video, the focus softens again. Less explanation, more observation. Because once you see the paw as an interface, it becomes easier to watch it work without needing to analyze it at all. There is a point where explanation stops being necessary. If you watch an animal walk slowly, especially one with paws, the story begins to tell itself. The movement is unhurried. Each step arrives, settles, and lifts away. Nothing looks forced. When an animal walks at rest, weight transfers gradually from one paw to the next. Pads touch the ground first. They compress slightly, just enough to accept the body's mass. Then, as the limb moves forward, the pressure releases. This compression and release happens rhythmically, over and over again. A quiet cycle that repeats without variation. If you slow the moment down, you can see how little effort is wasted. There is no slamming into the ground, no abrupt stopping. The paw meets the surface as if it expects to be there. Toes spread subtly under load, pads flatten, then rebound. The limb above remains calm, supported rather than jarred. Even when the animal changes direction, the motion remains smooth. Weight shifts diagonally. One paw bears slightly more load, another lifts early. These adjustments are small, but they are constant. What often feels soothing about watching this kind of movement is its predictability. Nothing surprising happens, no sudden jerks, no exaggerated gestures. The body trusts the ground, and the ground is met with equal trust. You can see this clearly when an animal walks across a familiar surface. A cat moving across a room it knows well. A dog pacing along a regular path. The paws land where they expect to land. The body follows without hesitation. Pads compress in the same way each time. The rhythm remains steady. This repetition has a calming quality. The nervous system, even as an observer, recognizes the pattern. Contact, support, release, over and over. Watching paws move slowly removes urgency from motion. Movement becomes maintenance rather than effort. There is also a visible economy to it. No step is larger than it needs to be. No lift is higher than required. The paw clears the ground, then returns. Nothing is wasted. Even pauses are supported. When an animal stops walking, the paws do not lock or stiffen. They remain engaged. Pads continue to bear weight gently. Tiny adjustments keep balance without visible strain. Stillness remains active but not tense. This is especially noticeable in animals standing quietly. A dog waiting, a cat watching. The paws do not fidget. They hold. Weight distributes evenly. Muscles above relax because the contact point below is stable. The longer you watch, the more the ground itself seems to disappear. Attention shifts to the rhythm rather than the surface. You stop noticing where the animal is walking and start noticing how. This is why watching animals move can feel grounding. It draws attention downward, toward contact, toward repetition. There is no forward rush, no sense of destination. Only movement happening because movement happens. Paws contribute to this feeling because they soften transitions. They blur the boundary between motion and rest. Each step ends gently. Each beginning is quiet. In a world filled with sharp starts and sudden stops, this kind of movement feels different. Less demanding, more settled. Animals do not perform this way for an audience. They move like this because it costs less. Less energy, less wear, less disruption. The body remains within comfortable limits. That comfort is visible. You can see it in how easily the animal shifts position, how readily it pauses, how naturally it resumes. Nothing has to be reassembled between steps. If you allow yourself to watch for long enough, the question of why paws exist begins to feel less important. The function is visible. The benefit is obvious. The explanation fades into observation. There is something reassuring about that. Movement that does not hurry. Contact that does not harm. Repetition that does not exhaust. Just paws touching the ground, again and again. Steady, predictable, enough. At the beginning, the question felt simple. Why do animals have paws instead of feet? Along the way, that question unfolded into something quieter. Less about comparison, more about relationship. Paws were never trying to be clever. They were never aiming to impress. They formed slowly in response to weight, ground, temperature, and time. They learned how to meet the world without fighting it. Soft, where softness was needed. Firm, where firmness mattered. Sensitive enough to feel, strong enough to endure. Humans followed a different path. Upright walking, long distances, hands freed for other work. No choice was better. Each was simply suited to a different way of living. And paws continue doing what they have always done. Carrying bodies, absorbing force, sensing surfaces, adjusting without announcement. They do not ask to be noticed. If you think about it now, you may realize that you've been watching paws your entire life. On on walks, in doorways, at the edge of a bed, resting quietly beneath a body at ease. They were always working, always adapting, always meeting the ground in the same calm way. The explanation doesn't need to stay sharp. It can soften, like a paw settling onto a familiar surface. Pressure spreading, weight supported, nothing urgent left to solve. You don't need to remember every detail. You don't need to hold the answer tightly. The question has done its job. It brought attention to something steady and ordinary, something that works quietly again and again. If your thoughts drift now, that's okay. If sleep comes, that's welcome too. Somewhere nearby, an animal is shifting its weight. A paw is touching the ground, doing what it has always done. And here, for now, that's enough. Good night.